So welcome again for another episode of Project Cancer. This time we're going to cover research. I'll pass off to Lise to start the conversation.
And this is research that you as a patient are or are not doing yourself. So first question is, when should you or should you not do your own research? And the next points are, where do you get your research from and how do you deal with it? So Peter, when did you decide to start researching?
Well, because I like to understand what's going on. It's just built into my character. As soon as the brain tumours were found, or even just before that actually, when it was clear that something was wrong in my body, I did do some research. And of course that was really dangerous because brain tumours could be brain cancer, they could be not malignant, they could be benign, they could be secondaries for another sort of cancer. So I soon stopped doing that because I was just going to get in the morass of stuff I didn't know. So I'd really stopped then for about 3 or 4 weeks until the primary cancer had been found and the treatment and the mutation had been found and therefore the treatment been defined. Then I started again in a much bigger way with much more data. So I knew what cancer I had, the metastasization and the treatment regime.
This is where we found the word cyberchondria, didn't we? Do you want to tell us?
Yes, so hypochondria is a word I don't think you'd heard before. So this is hypochondria, but using the internet to do it. Pretty dangerous sort of thing to do. And GPs apparently hate the fact that the patients now come in with saying, I think I've got this. So if you are hypochondriac, it's not good news for your own stress levels because you're worried too much potentially about your own body. If you're cyberchondriac, it gives you the opportunity to be even worse because there's so much stuff out there that could be wrong because the symptoms you have might be completely different from whatever issue you have with your body. So I am fully aware that I'm marginally hypochondriac and because of my use of the internet could be classed as marginally cyberchondriac.
Of course, there is another option, which is you let someone else do that research. If you have a close partner or a close friend, they could help by doing some of the research and then just telling you what they think is useful to you rather than discussing.
Yeah, there seems to be, I've spoken to many people who've are on cancer journeys or have been on cancer journeys, and there's a sort of spectrum between the people who not really put their hand in the sands, but just hand over their lives to the health service, to the NHS here in the UK, to make the decisions for them. And then there's the other end of the spectrum, which I'm at that end, where they do a huge amount of research. But there's also, it appears from talking to people where maybe the carer does the research or a close friend and the patient, the sufferer, doesn't. In the case of Lisa and I, she read a book called How to Starve Cancer, and from that we found an organisation that was implementing some of the ideas in the book, and from that then made a decision with David Gilligan, my oncologist, to take a drug called metformin, which is usually used for type 2 diabetes, but has got quite a lot of data now, research data, solid research data that says that it may delay the onset of the mutation, which of course I want to do, because the more time I can spend in the healthy state I'm at the moment, the more life I can enjoy.
So what are the different sources that a patient could find their research from?
Well, of course, there are books, there is the NHS itself, which published some literature, and the website. It's a really good website, the NHS website, although it's set at the sort of lowest common denominator, so if you want to do more research, you've got to get further. There are generic cancer websites and organisations like Cancer Research UK, and then there are specific ones, in my case lung cancer, there's the Roy Castle Lung Cancer Foundation, and then more specific ones which are the various mutations, and there is actually a charity which runs a brilliant Facebook group on my specific mutation called EGFR positive. And then there's Google, then there's Dr. Google, and there's a lot of stuff there.
So when doing research on Google, as you said, Dr. Google as is known nowadays, how can we use Google constructively? How can we make sure what we're reading is correct, is independent. How do you approach that? How do you approach what you
Yeah,
read on Google?
yeah, what is correct? You know, they say that Wikipedia, because it's edited by the whole world, can be wrong. So, and probably is wrong. You know, there's misinterpretation. So, what is the truth? You know, that's a strongly philosophical question. So, what one has to do, of course, is to broaden the reach. So, you read something about a subject and you read it somewhere else, another site. Clearly, if the site is specifically something you're more likely to trust, which would be a health institution, an academic institution, possibly an expert, there's a particular expert on my cancer in Boston, in Massachusetts, etc., then you're more likely to believe it. But overall, it's just a matter of collecting the data and making one's own decision about how accurate and truthful it is.
Mm. And you can also do simple things like just look at when was this research carried out, and is it second-hand or is it original research? What is the date of the publication? And what about things like distinguishing between whether something is independent or it's a sales site?
Yes, the date obviously varies because medical technology is moving on so rapidly. The stuff that's more up to date, probably less data, but it's more up to date, is more likely to be correct. But yeah, conflict of interest really strong. So if you see an academic paper, it has to define, or all the ones I've looked at have to define whether the funder has been somebody who there could be a financial implication to them. So you'll get, maybe a company that's involved in selling cigarettes will, at least at the bottom of the research, will say this was funded by so-and-so company. But yeah, you have to take that sort of research in a different way, clearly, from pure, and particularly pharmaceutical companies. In the end, pharmaceutical companies are profit-driven. I mean, obviously, great social outcome, but they are profit-driven. So research done by them, you have to look at that in a different way than research done by a public academic institution.
Yeah, and there's also simply country of origin. Is this research relevant in the US or the UK? Are these treatments available in this country and not that country?
Yeah,
that's another thing to think about.
Exactly. Yeah. So there's more information on cancer in the US in the English language than there is in the UK, of course, because there are many more people there and there's lots more money wandering around the health service there. But the types of treatment availability could be different just because of different philosophy about treatment, driven politically perhaps, but certainly can be very different because of the different amount of money floating around in the system there, and therefore the costs.
Mm. And then, of course, if there's anything you're really worried about or is very important in your case, it's really important to share it with your oncologist, isn't it? And ask their...
Yes, one certainly shouldn't embark on a different sort of treatment without at least mentioning to the oncologist to see what their view is. It may be completely outside their remit, like, for instance, Chinese medicine, but generally it's important for them to be open because they can't help make decisions if you're taking something that they don't know about, of course. But again, that's a discussion like we said before on when we were talking about working with the NHS or working with your health provider. You know, it's a not say intellectual discussion, but and it certainly isn't an argument, but it is a jointly beneficial discussion when you find something that you think might be of use for your health journey.
I think that's been really useful, so let's finish the podcast here today.
Yes, thank you very much.
You, Peter.
Thank you, Lise, and see you soon.